So you've got fuel, and when you try to explain that this fuel is happening in the super subsection of your cells, man, you lose your audience.
Yeah.
But when you talk about that fuel being from a campfire, I've just found patients grab that with their minds, and they really can dance around. Oh, that's the difference.
Yeah.
So I equate, and I had other teachers give this example as well that I think really does do it justice. If you're going to start a fire and you have kindling, you know that those little needles, pine needles and leaves, it just takes a spark and boom, you get this beautiful fire. And a lot of times if you look above the fire, there's a bunch of debris.
Yeah, a little piece of ash floating around, yeah.
Yeah, and that is equivalent to what glucose looks like when we burn it in our cells. So yep, it doesn't take much. Your body's never going to forget how to use the glucose. It can get resistant to insulin, but once the glucose gets to the fire, it is going to burn easily, but it's going to be hot, fast, and over. And nothing like a Thanksgiving gluttony to teach that hot, fast, and over leads to a fatigue that
Yes.
when the fuel is pulled away. Proteins are a little, I describe them as twigs, and it's because they are broken down into amino acids to get into the fuel part of how do you turn that into energy. But it is very difficult to sustain a fire. You have to constantly be paying attention if you're going to make your fire with twigs only. Maybe the kindling of those leaves got those twigs burning, but when you fuel a body only on protein and you don't have fat as your baseline, you got to pay attention all the time. You really got to focus on keeping the right proteins at the right time. And it doesn't make for a, well, if you want to pay only attention to the fire, then it's fine.
Right.
But that's not.
Sounds like a real pain in the butt
Yeah.
to say, I'm going to use protein as my main fuel source.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas with carbs, they are like flame up, flame out.
Amen. Right. That's exactly. And then if you got to that campfire and you said, all right, I'm going to start burning these ketones. I'm going to do logs, which is equivalent of burning fat. And you take the match to the log and you try to get it to go, and you're like, yeah, that's not working. I can't get it to go. I can't get it to go. I can't get it to go. So difficult to get it starting. Once you finally get it going, the next log almost takes off without any of your help.
That's right.
And the next one, and the next one. And that fire is sustainable. If you fall asleep with that fire on, you can wake up a few hours later and it's still burning.
Yeah.
And that process is such a great analogy, especially when you compare the time of how long the fuel takes to not just burn, but the waste that comes out of a constantly glucose fueling fire, as opposed to, it's not that a log fire or a fat burning fire doesn't have any waste, but it is remarkably less.
Yeah, it's a cleaner experience, much like what you said when you have the little bits of things burning up, the needles and the leaves. You have a lot of things floating around, and it can get kind of out of control a little bit, right? Especially if it's a windy day. I just experienced this up in North Georgia. The kids all little children, by the way, are pyromaniacs, right?
Oh, of course.
They want to burn things. We're doing s'mores and all that stuff. But there's to get the stuff going, you got leaves and little twigs, just like what you're talking about, and stuff is blowing around and it's going, and it is exciting. But what do you do
like glucose.
once you get that heat going and those nice big coals? As you throw those big logs on them, what happens is you got the raging hot fire that's now settled down, much more calm, much less stuff blowing around up in the air, but a fire that, like you said, you can walk in the house for an hour and come back out and that thing's still doing really well.
Mm-hmm. And that analogy continues to play out. Even now, we're like, since I started trying to teach ketogenic journeys, we're 8 years later, whatever it is. But that analogy really works for when you look at that waste in our bodies. When I get patients who are diabetic, so they've been over consuming and burning glucose for 30 years. And the waste throughout their body is what's causing their brain not to work, their heart to have a risk, their eyes to be blind, their fingers and toes to be at risk of amputation. Their body isn't working right because of the waste that happens when you only burn glucose.
Wow. And
to push them to say, okay, I need you to do this ketone thing. It it takes a commitment. You don't just take a match and light a log and say you're going to be good tomorrow. No,
Right.
it takes a minute. It takes education of what's going to happen, and especially when patients come in and they're not fit, they're not they've been abusing their drug of choice, sugar, and now they've got layers of fat, which you say, well, I should be good for the ketogenic diet. I've got all this fat. I'm like, yeah, but you can't touch it until you fix that chemistry set.
That's exactly right. Your body's not going to tap into all that nice stored opportunity on your body until it has to.
Exactly.
Because you got to flip that switch. Because most of us listening are running on carbohydrates as our fuel.
Right.
Even if they're, clean carbs.
Yeah.
They're from rices and oatmeal and fruits and vegetables and things like this that have, decent, not crappy carbs, the processed carbs that so many people are stuck on. But there are all their other options.
Yeah, and you watch their bodies and brains, and I think that's the hardest part of the first 20 years of practice, or about 20 years before I said, okay, I gotta change the way I'm seeing patients, is that internal medicine is the watching people age. And when you start in internal medicine, you get your 30-year-olds, which aren't very many, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and all of them are aging. And of course, you're aging too.
Right.
And then you got the ones dropping off at the end and going, oh gosh, that's not fun. Oh my goodness, I hope I can find a way to have more people not do that. How do I prevent that? And as you look at the best internal medicine physician, primary care physicians, they prevent problems the patient never knew were coming. But that's kind of a private celebration. and the prevention really is about, can you get the patient's behavior to change? So when you're just saying it's for weight loss, I think that motivation is fickle. I mean, the number of times I've put patients on a weight loss journey, told them to exercise, do the things that are, and they don't feel good. I mean, the beauty of what happened when my mom was in this zombie phase, and again, best healthcare deliverable.
Yeah.
I mean, escorted by me.
Right.
6 days of changing what the fuel was, and she is looking at me with a soul that's starting to wake up for the first time in probably 10 years.
Wow.
Like the recorded memory of my kids knowing that zombie version of grandma. I mean, she would put on the performance and then she would have to sleep for like 17 hours. And this is right before she was like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again.
Yep.
To know what does the life look like before people get to that? Well, it's little things like, Doc, I'm tired more than I think I should. I can't get this 30 pounds off. Doc, I can't seem to focus in the afternoon. Maybe I have ADHD. Like, no, you gotta put the fuel back in your body the way we were designed to eat, which, the first place I start with, and this becomes a talking point, is I tell people you need 20 total carbohydrates in a day, not the net carbs, not the, no added sugar carbs. I need 20 total carbohydrates in a day. And a lot of that stems from, yes, I struggled to get there because I was trying to follow these other rules that there was no way. I was insulin resistant too. I had about 30 pounds I shouldn't have had on. But that was, it completely blocked the ability to make a ketone. And then I couldn't get to the other side of that either. So watching to see that, most of the patients I see are more like my mother, more like what I was struggling with at that time, than they are the healthy guy that can get away with, eating, dirty keto, whatever it is.
Yeah, dirty keto.
All right. So as I write the rest of this book, I took a good story. It's a love story between a mother and a daughter.
Yeah.
And it really is God helped me with something I'd never done before, never written a book. I self-published it, and at the behest of my husband.
And you read it yourself, which always for me, and I've listened to a lot of audiobooks in my day, when the author does the reading,
Amen.
It's way better.
Yeah.
It just is. It's read from the heart.
Yeah. You can't escape that story.
Yep.
So it's like 70% story, 30% science.
Yeah.
I left a lot of my notes on the cutting room floor of what I do in my clinic. So December 31st, 2020, I pushed publish on the second book, which is Keto Continuum, really walking another patient story through what does I do today in my clinic, and where do I see them get stuck, and where do things go wrong, and using a story. And it comes with a workbook, which essentially are the handouts that come that I use in my clinic. And I've said this thousands of times that you do not need to be a physician to teach the ketogenic diet. It helps when you're advising people that are very chronically ill and don't know it.
Yes.
But read a book. The secrets are in the book, people.
Yeah.
I have people write in all the time saying, "Can I be your patient?" I'm like, "No." Do you know what a ketone is? Hell no. Nobody can see me unless they can define a ketone first.
I love it.
Yeah.
A couple of quick things, because I think they're really worth noting. Number one, when you're trying in your practice as a physician to genuinely help someone, to get to a root cause and not just handle symptoms, but really fix them, I think that isn't that really what it's all about?
That is what you go to school to fix. I mean, that is the core of what the education was about too.
Right.
It is just not the core of what the business of delivering that.
That's
skill
right.
is.
And I feel like there's got to be a lot of physicians like you that are going through those motions, but not because they really want to. It's just kind of the way things have gotten.
Right. No, it's a dangerous place to be.
They would love to be able to break out into like, gosh, if I could just work for myself and like solve people's problems and really help them. There's got to be a huge community of people like this.
Well, you remember that bulldozer on top of a wedding cake? Yeah, there's not a lot of people that will want to bulldoze, that want to marry
That's
a
right.
bulldozer.
That have the personality or the
Say-
character to do it.
It's real because you're stepping outside a pack. I mean, anytime something goes wrong, people start eating a high-fat diet, low carbohydrates, or maybe they just take the high fat and they keep doing it. They have a heart attack and they say, "Dr. Boz told me to do it on YouTube." I mean, you stand in front of a panel of peers and say, "You did what?" I'm like, okay, how do you enter into this space where I actually, the reason I started a YouTube channel wasn't really a channel, was I needed my patients to go watch these lectures because I cannot handle telling about a ketone again.
The same conversation, right. It's
Right.
like,
And
it's recorded. Go watch it.
And it's a revelation to them and they're like, what? And they're shocked and every time. And I'm like, oh, read the book.
Yes. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and you said it already, but I want to be clear on this, that weight loss as your primary reason for doing a ketogenic diet, I think is not a good primary reason. I think you do it for everything else: longevity, better energy, better just physical performance, like all these other things that are more meaningful and people can attach themselves to stay in it, to stay disciplined, right? To really fight for their health. If you're just trying to do a diet just because you got 10 to 25 pounds that you want to get off, guess what? After you lose that 10 to 25, you're going to go back to whatever you were doing and you're going to gain it right back. And this is the cycle of life for people who are repeat dieters, right?
Yeah, you coach people through lives of, that transition.
Right.
The word that I think connects the snake oil to the science was the removal of inflammation.
Right.
So when you have a mitochondria, that's where our heat, where our energy comes from. And whether it's the brain, the heart, your tongue, your finger, all of that energy that supplies to that part of your body it has to burn a fuel. When we have glucose as the only one, not only does the debris fly high into the air with a cost to our body that you don't get to see. You just get to watch that it's aging you faster than your neighbor. The antidote isn't never have a carbohydrate again in your life, although it's close to that while you have to undo all of this. And that's the season that people really have a metric that can be monitored day to day in their home to say, okay, I'm trying to reduce your insulin. I'm also trying to reduce your inflammation. And we can measure some of that point of care in your home. You buy it, don't need a prescription from me. Go to the internet, push click and buy that and study yourself. And really that's been where I've taken this puzzle that says, watching hundreds of people improve their journey with living in a state of ketosis, really reversing neuropathies, reversing some autoimmune disorders that I'm like, I don't think this can reverse it. Let's do it. We're going to commit to 6 months. This is the plan. Here's what it would have to look like if we're going to reverse that medical diagnosis that every one of my textbooks says you can't reverse. Just like my mother's diagnosis could not be treated any way except with that chemotherapy.
Yep.
That process of repairing the body, it is kind of like that log where when you first wring out that inflammation, you get a fire. But the longer that fire grows, as long as the fuel stays solid, they do wring out that inflammation. The white blood cells do come back and do what they were supposed to do to those broken nerves, and they heal the neuropathy. The antibodies, where it's attacking your thyroid, and I can't guarantee that your thyroid is not all gone. I don't know when you start. But those antibodies come from cells that were made in an inflammatory goo. And when you take out that inflammation and you measure it, I have a worksheet. Check your morning glucose. Check your morning ketones. Divide the big number by the little number. That's called the Dr. Boz ratio, which is simplified math simply because my zombie version of mom couldn't do all the other math to convert the metrics back and forth. I said, just take the big number, divide by the little number. Tell me what you get, Mom. And this is how we would measure. Is she in an advanced state of ketosis, or is she in... And of course, what we were learning is she can't eat late at night. You have to put that here. You have to give me at least 16 hours of not eating. And in her case, it got closer to like 23 hours of not eating. And then she actually, you'll get to this fasted for 40 days in there. And was not planned. There's a nightmare that happens in the middle of that story. You're like,
wow,
that chronically inflamed body had problems. And when those problems got worse, you have to go meet the medical world. That's the only options we have. And that's going to come with a whole bunch of, they aren't going to talk about keto. They're going to talk about what prescriptions and what surgery is going to fix this problem. Wow. And that's where many people have stayed. So when I look at what the beautiful part about a ketogenic diet that has gone, it's not unsung, it's just quietly sung, I think. Maybe it's because when you stand out too high, it's easy to get the attacks, but that reversal of inflammation is what the core science is behind all of this. And there is a measurable process to do this. It's not like a guessing game. You should be able to document what is your inflammatory rate, what is your insulin, what is your Dr. Boz ratio every day when you wake up if you're trying to reach these outcomes for your health. And those are the core things that do keep people motivated. I think it's not an accident that God led me through this journey of 20 years of really getting a spiritual reward of helping people with addiction. And now knowing that a ketogenic diet, it's about addiction here. I mean, you love that carb because it pops your brain with a beautiful party of dopamine. And
so many of us are, myself included, and I've had stretches and moments where I've been, solely like ketogenic or, done a bit of IF or, I had a big period last year where I was very closely monitoring I had a coach and lost 25 pounds over a 5-month period and leaned out, and I'm putting myself back on that actually over the last few weeks, just because it's very easy, even for people who know better, to stay disciplined with things. But I know there's people listening that are saying, how can you tell me that it's healthier to eat this fat food versus this carbohydrate food? But it's because we've been programmed for many years now, since the 50s.
Oh, yeah. George McGovern.
Right. That carbohydrates are at the top of the food chain, right, when it comes to what you should be eating every meal and what's sustainable energy and all of this garbage, really.
It is.
It is garbage. When we start to realize that, no, in the morning, steak and eggs actually is the smart breakfast.
And that's the
or
log.
Or bacon and eggs.
Right.
Right.
That's the log.
Right.
That's that fire, that process is going to fuel you in a way that you have programmed to look for that food every couple of hours. There's a psychological component to that. There is a practiced habit of saying, no. I know the world says you should eat now, but you should keep doing some purposeful things to distract yourself because it's not time to eat. You're really not hungry. And especially if you're trying to keep that fuel burning from fat that's in storage. We got a chemistry set. Before you eat that food, let me see your numbers. Check your numbers before you do that. And if you're not in a state of ketosis, you're just going to put more into the storage than you're going to.
Yeah. And I was the same. I was part of the problem. You go back 10 years when I'm even 20, put an age on myself. I'm 46. I started training people in 1998. And all the learning back then, all the literature and the organizations were pumping out, carbohydrates for athletes,
Amen.
You got to do this, got to do that. And, certainly depending on, what you're doing and who you are and where you are, what stage of life you're in, and all this stuff. I mean, there can still be a place for carbohydrates when eaten smartly, or but I was the guy that was saying, eat really often, eat small meals very often, right? I mean, because everyone thought that. Mm-hmm. Right? If you go back just not that long ago, everyone thought that that's going to speed up the metabolism, right? Isn't that what we were told?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But I'm all the way back to, geez, if you're just eating the right foods, breakfast, lunch, and dinner will work for you.
Yeah, and I actually think most adults work best on two meals a day.
Or even two, right?
Mm-hmm.
But skip your breakfast, maybe even, and just do a lunch and a dinner, right? Or, wedge them into more of a window where you have these longer fasting periods. Is that kind of...
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. That when we look at a continuum, because you kind of come into the ketogenic world kind of like we did, with a little bit of, are you sure I should be eating this much fat?
Right.
What? Well, that looks crazy.
Should I have half an avocado every single day?
What do you mean scoop it out with a piece of bacon?
Right.
What? Are you kidding?
Right. My bacon is my spoon, right. And I'm just eating straight avocado. And then I also had 3 eggs for breakfast or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
So that journey gets them a little ways into it. But we have a zone that we say, this is your baseline metabolism, and you should be able to live here. And so there are 4 layers of that, depending on how much you want to advance your metabolism. And then there's ways to stress your metabolism, which is to deny it food. For the highest that I recommend in my journey is they've got a baseline of ketosis. And I don't ask patients to fast for more than 72 hours. But one of the ultimate skill developers, I mean, when you're stressed somebody to learn a new skill or to push a new weight, you're developing a skill. As I have them document 8 consecutive weeks of a 72-hour fast every week while keeping their eating window with what they were before they started that. So if their eating window is 4 hours or 6 hours, that stays. And we start with a 36-hour fast a couple of weeks, then we go to a 48-hour fast for a few weeks. And if they're looking for this advanced level of reversing their health, of really improving those health problems, getting off prescriptions, those are real attainable goals that I couldn't say out loud in 2015. I really thought, I don't think you can get off your thyroid medicine. I've never seen that happen in 20 years. I don't think you can undo diabetes. I've never seen that happen in 20 years. You can't get off insulin once you're on it. That's just impossible. I've never seen that. I mean, and I saw lots of patients.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I'm just using the wrong lever here. And that changed my heart. Like, oh, this is why I went into medicine.
Wow. Because we are a gluttonous culture, right?
There's a reason there's a rule book called the Bible. It says
right.
You should follow some rules.
That's right. First world problems, right?
Amen.
We have too much food to eat.
Yep.
I mean, and a lot of it's the wrong food. I mean, number one, our bodies need to breathe, and they need water, and they need movement. I mean, I would put it in that order, and then maybe even sleep. Food probably makes it maybe at 5th.
Yeah,
it's down the line,
it's
right?
A detail, right?
Is it? We've made food. I'm guilty too.
Oh yeah.
We've made food like the most important thing, haven't we?
And then how much you think about it. That's the part
right.
that I think has been the hardest part for me over the years. Is like, I have people ask me out for lunch, and I just think, who eats in the middle of the day anymore?
That's so 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, and I used to, and they're like, you have to eat. And I'm like, okay.
At some point I do.
Right. But what it's like, you think that option's like 4 or 5 times in a day, and you're like, no. I couldn't get half the stuff done I try to get done in a day right now if I ate that often. Not only is it peak brain performance, I do think that's been the literature that's been the 2 areas that I've really found fascinating, which was one of the reasons I was like, I really want to go on their show and just hear more about what I've listened to several of your guests, and some of them I would love to debate. But
I'm sure. Yeah, we get a nice mix.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's great. But the areas that have been just really helped me to stay passionate about the ketogenic diet has been the fitness world. My youngest son is a wrestler.
Yeah.
And in South Dakota, your world of baseball is like our world of wrestling in South Dakota. So you show up in a gym on a Saturday morning anywhere in those little towns of South Dakota, and like you pay the fire marshal to leave because there's way too many people for capacity. It's just all those little wrestlers.
So there's a lot of like onesies and people running around with those little soft helmet things and weird ears because of rolling around on the mats. Is that true?
Cauliflower is preventable.
Cauliflower ears. Yeah.
So
wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
you look at Dom D'Agostino's, his infusion of this science into not the weight building world, but also the cognitive world. It satisfies my hunger for, if this explained, I need to see where this is being applied. And you look at the folks who are coaching the most advanced gymnastics team or the most advanced wrestling team. And, they say right out, you have to fuel the brain if you want the athlete to win. So if the brain is used to using glucose, you're in trouble. To get those gymnastics, and I think of wrestling and gymnastics as the most advanced weight management plus,
Yes.
pliability.
Same here.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Those two sports are uniquely advanced. And you see the ones who rise above that teenage years where puberty hits and either they can't stay disciplined, they can't take the hit, they can't take it, that it's a hard season. I'm telling you, middle school ruins a lot of wrestling families.
Yeah.
Same as gymnastics. Those women get into they're now cycling with a menstruation and their
Right.
hormones are going to change.
Yeah, they're not 8 anymore. Right.
Right. So now how do you have their body on a log burning process where their brain development doesn't have them have shorter hippocampi? They have full brain development because they're not cutting weight. And they really are fueled to have better cognition during the fight, during the wrestling, and watch that. I mean, it gives me goosebumps to just know. I think the person who misses me the most from Sioux Falls, South Dakota was the wrestling coach. Where I'm like, I know, here's what I know that other major organizations pay big money for is this metabolic advanced health of how do you get a wrestler to cut weight without getting him crabby.
That's right.
And then he doesn't want to, you can't think about the movie. He's an irritable teenager.
Right.
We all know what that
That's
looks
what
like.
we all think about when we think of like a bodybuilder or anybody who's like got this weight management, almost feels like a full-time job
Right.
for them to kind of hover and stay or get to a certain weight or point. And to do it gracefully in a way where you still feel energized and you're not moody.
You have to be a good sportsmanship.
Yes.
I mean, as the mother of a wrestler, wrestling coaches are this strange breed, almost like firstborn females. They are weird, but they are so important for the sport to actually to put out what I think of as very strong, disciplined men. And when you have people that aren't sportsmen, I mean, sportsmanship becomes really important. Maybe it's in every sport, and I'm just experiencing it as the mom of a teenage boy in this, that when they can't control their anger, they are not on the team. That is not acceptable. And that really inspires me to say, okay, now how can you not sabotage the kid? Because if you're asking him to cut 20 pounds of weight, you're just the brain, you're causing brain damage. That's not healthy. But there is a very powerful way to wring out every inflammatory molecule in that body and to allow him to build the highest muscle performance during the season, off the season. It's not that he never gets a carb, but that advanced ketosis can make for a really strong athlete. And there's nobody better than Dom D'Agostino to give you some examples of what does it look like to be a strong, very cognitively advanced, athlete, scientist, all in one. And that leadership role that he has demonstrated, but also has attracted people to come from different branches of the neuroscience, the metabolic health, the weight building, the muscle. I mean, all of these people came together because of his rifted personality, not rifted, but he's got an identity here, and really has been able to transcend and bring together these sciences that a dorky internist like me that says, I want the cancer patients and the anti-inflammatory, and I want the reversal of autoimmune problems to be an option, and it never was when I wasn't using this.
Yep.
So that cognitive improvement that I think is a huge underlying tone for not just the athlete, but my patients. You die. My mother was headed to a place where I would have said, well, we're just going to stop giving her prescription medications.
Yep.
Her brain it's offline. It's not doing anything. And I've seen families make that choice. They don't die tomorrow. It takes them years to still die. But it's not life.
You're existing.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
No,
and to say, can you prevent that? Yeah, but you can't show up when you're already having memory problems and ask me to undo it. It is a prevention problem. It is the sleep, the life that does come with it. And to know that I've got a teenage boy that he just got first in
Yes,
Florida.
congratulations, by the way. First for his weight class, 134 pounds.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive.
That was so exciting.
And that was going to be my next question. So you personally have been enjoying a ketogenic diet for how long now?
2015.
So we're 7 years in.
Amen.
And you've been rocking it out since then. Obviously, you fumbled your way through it in the beginnings. Mm-hmm. Do you still test?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Should we do that?
Yeah. Well, let's see.
Okay. Keep asking me questions while I get this out.
All right. Who are we testing?
Of course, both of us. It's got to have a
Oh
contest.
boy, you're going to beat me because mine's probably going to be.
This is the reason you'll have to invite me back. So here's the real test that we'll have to.
I went through this last year. I was doing this every morning for 2 months. Yeah.
Honestly, though, it is.
Do I need to get a strip out?
I'll get that one out.
Okay.
So that's uric acid. So that's one of the other things that I think is one of the key to saying, yes, we can check your ketones, we can check your glucose, and that will tell me inflammation. Yes, I check my son. Yes, I check that wrestling coach. But my son's lean. He has 2% body fat, whatever.
It's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'll check mine, then I'll check yours.
Okay, that sounds fine.
The process of improving his metabolism starts with he doesn't get options of cereal in our house. He on the way home from every wrestling practice, he gets one of those before.
Oh my gosh! Look at this. Yeah. See, she just busted out a Brunswick sardine fillets, gourmet style, in olive oil, and this. Yeah, you cited this in your book. This is the thing your dad really looked forward to. He likes these.
Yes. Well, he thought they all had to be eaten with crackers. I had to break him of that habit.
This is 200 calories for one can, 15 grams of fat, 0 carbohydrates, 16 grams of protein. It's herring in olive oil, but. I guess I don't know that I've had. It's been a while.
So yeah, the beauty. I didn't have enough blood on my finger there, so I'm just going to use this one.
Okay,
These are the
that's fine.
Point of care.
Yeah. So yeah, for those listening, she has a couple of blood test, devices here. They're real simplistic. I have one at home in my cabinet, and I did this every morning for a few months just to make sure I was down, and I would float between usually 60 and 80 was probably my number. I wasn't trying to be.
So glucose of 87 there, and the ketone there. It says 0.2, but I bet you it's a little. I'll bet you if I check it in about 5 minutes. I've been fasting for most of the day. I ate breakfast, and when I can feel that the glucose is doing what it's going to do, and my ketones are about to burst. So I'll check a uric acid while I'm at it too, and then I'll check yours. So let's just review that. So when you look at glucose and ketones, those are two fuels that are run by your body, and insulin, which is what the Latin Greek word gets it to insulate you.
Yes.
Okay, so the storage of fuel comes from how well that insulin is being made and how well it's been stimulated. When the particle size of your insulin, of your carbohydrate is small, so specifically processed food, or even like coconut flour, it's a small particle size. It's known for stimulating more insulin than if you ate the coconut, like the whole food, the non-processed version of it.
Right.
Right. So that insulin will tell the glucose to do one thing and the ketone to do one thing. So in the absence of glucose, your body will increase the ketones and the glucose is lower. Having a measurement of your insulin is another way to think of what's your inflammatory state. This is uric acid, which is, what do you know about uric acid? Have you heard?
Probably not enough to really talk about it,
So
other than
gout.
I know.
Does that word come to name?
Oh,
Yeah,
gout I've heard of, yeah.
Okay, so that's what, if I'm going to diagnose you with gout.
I've heard it's very painful, too.
Yeah, so there's 4.2 of uric acid. So that's probably the better number if I get to measure one number of somebody. Uric acid is what we would diagnose with gout. Above 7 would be at risk for gout. Think of it as the debris that's present in your body. And when
and where is it present? In our blood, right?
Right. It transits in your blood. It will accumulate in the joint, like in your toe joint, which is gout's known for that. It's
usually deposits down in the lower body, right?
Yep.
The feet.
cooler area of the body. So in between that joint space is colder, and that crystallization happens in those cooler joints. They happen in other joints too, but those are the most common ones. And it's not when you have a little bit of uric acid that you get a gout attack. It's you've had a lot.
Wow.
So
we're going to find out what my numbers are here shortly here. So your numbers are both nice.
Yeah,
right?
They're fine. Yeah.
What would you give yourself grade-wise right now?
So that's a pretty good number. I'd say I check my numbers a lot, so I know that they're actually really good. But it's not fair.
Stop bragging.
I know. I'm not trying to do that, but it's something I practice. I fast.
All right. So what are we doing here? You're pricking me?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a weekly pattern that I have, which is I do a live.
I'll let you squeeze my finger.
A live YouTube show that I do on Tuesday night at the end of my fast. So that's a 48-hour fast usually. So that's a 10-second countdown.
Okay.
And then this one, I gotta
Should we get some more blood out of that bad boy? Can you get enough? There's a good push.
There you go.
You got it.
Okay, so ketones a 0.4, so similar. And that's exactly how I wipe mine off too. And glucose is 78.
78.
That's pretty good. So those are not bad. Good numbers. So now we'll see what is the debris level. And I just think that's another really good. When this came out,
do we need to?
We have to poke it again.
You're gonna have to do a redo on my. Yeah. So we're getting to the real number.
The real number.
So this is the uric
acid
number.
Yeah. So it sounds like
you
urine.
Want to do a different finger?
We'll do a different finger. Be nice to you. Yeah.
All right. We got a bleeder. Good
one. Yeah. So this one takes 15 seconds to count down to, but. Pretty good little. I love this meter that it has this kind of strips that don't go bad in South Dakota, which is like a thing. I also think
these strips usually have expiration dates on them, correct?
These are even better. So 4.7, not bad. Under 5 is a pretty good number for not having, for being not full of a lot of debris.
Okay, good.
One way to think of it. But I mean, I'll tell you, when people start on that journey of, well, what's my health really like? What's my health really like? Yeah. I can check your blood pressure. We can check your cholesterol. We can look at your waistline. There's lots of ways you can measure this. I think there's a really good program that I think it was out of Stanford. They were trying to perfect this, that when they look at someone's face, predicting their age is a thing our brain does, and then we don't know it does. But it's one of the best correlations to the telomere length at the end of your DNA.
Yes.
Where you say, what are some of the other benefits of a ketogenic diet? Go back to 2015 and look at my skin. It's kind of gray, and I don't look nearly as healthy.
Wow.
And I don't, of course, notice these things happening, but over the last year, they're like, wow, you're reversing an age. And that process of watching people, looking at people, saying, "Oh, you can look at them and say they're healthy, they're not healthy." That's a thing. You should trust that gut. And then look at their uric acid, because that's the other thing that I'm like, no, trust your gut. Look at their shape. Look at their skin. Look at their, how they how they participate with their mind, and then check their uric acid.
Wow,
that'd be the one thing I'd look at.
Yeah, it is something that we all do without, really trying to do. When we first meet somebody, pardon me, or come into contact with somebody, we kind of judge their look, their appearance, right? Pardon me. And it usually does become like an age thing. If we don't know how old someone is, we kind of predict in our minds, they're about 30-ish, or they're about 50 or whatever. And it feels good a lot of times when people like, what do you like? 39, 40, and I'm like, no, I'm actually a bit older than that, but I'm hopeful that I can always get that like 5 to 10 year, like less than I actually am look or response from people. It feels good. I want to look 40 when I'm 50.
Amen. Right. I just turned 50.
So congratulations. You beat me.
Yeah. And the process of studying that, where you really do say, well, what is that's predicting that? And, those are really good numbers. Your commitment to exercise, your commitment to burning the glucose with those intense moments of exercise, and having enough healthy things going on. When people come into my universe and they want to get their health reversed, it's a huge shift from where they've usually been.
Yes.
But when when people, like, you'll hear on social media some of the athletes saying that ketogenic diet is terrible and da da da, and you just look at them and you're like, no. If I had a continuous ketone monitor, I bet you're in ketosis more than you think you are.
Yes.
Because you burn through the glucose, and the only thing left is to fuel that much muscle mass.
Yes.
You're burning fat.
That's the other caveat is when you are healthy and you are active and you are, supplying your body with a good amount of protein and fat, and still carbs, right, in your diet, your furnace is burning at such a high rate that you are burning off that carbohydrate pine needle stuff so fast that your body has no choice but to tap in.
Absolutely.
And to be good at tapping into those fat stores.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at that fire analogy. It's not like the kindling didn't have a purpose. I mean, the glucose has plenty of, you'll never have a zero glucose moment.
Right.
That's death. Your body will have it there, and you're going to find it in life, even if you're not trying to.
That's right.
And that journey forward is a better imagery than when, if we would have never had a health problem.
Right.
When I look at internal medicine, my clinic has, the haunted halls of patients who had way too many years of only burning that one fuel because they didn't fast or go to a sauna or push their exercise schedules to find a way to burn those, to flex both of those levers for fuel production.
Right. Love it. It's kind of like the hybrid car, it's able to run on both systems, it's designed that way. And we have to optimize and get a little, everybody can be a little bit more disciplined, right, in their eating. And we all understand, you're going to have celebration moments and moments to reward yourself for something with, you want some apple pie or you want to have something like that. I'm not saying you can't do that ever in your life. It's just that so many of us are making that choice on a daily, if not multiple times a day, where we're gluttonous. We're just it's a time filler. It's an addictive thing.
Absolutely.
It's like we get such a taste for it. It's hard to break away from it. But you can also get good at eating more, fat-based food items, fat and protein, and kind of have more of a taste for those as you also, which is great, you lose your taste.
Yes.
And your desire grows less and less for sugary foods.